You always hear coaches and players and other high achievers say, win the day. They're always talking about that notion, right? Win the day. It's a little bit tired. It's a lot beaten down, but I get it. In fact, I actually subscribe to it. Get up, go to war with yourself, win the day, then get up and do it again and again and again. And if you string enough of them together, you don't just win the day, you win the life. That's how that goes. Once again, simple but not easy. However, in terms of this particular day, we're not even to lunch yet. Hell, here on the West Coast, it's only 9:03. But I can tell you somebody who has already won her day. The Queen herself, Danica from Jacksonville, diehard Jags fan. She's already won the day. She came in here yesterday and said that if Tim Tebow is not cut after his on-the-field performance this past weekend, she would lick Rit's bald head. And if you know anything about the Queen, you know that's no idle threat.
Now, I'm out of money for season tickets, and the only thing I can do is go to the games, get drunk, find a little tenderoni, and take him home for the night and ruin him. I'm out.
So the Queen knows. The Queen knows. She knows how to, well, she knows Jags football. She knows football. She knows how to get drunk. She knows how to find tenderonis. And that's not you, Rit. Nothing tender about you, old man. She knows how to find tenderonis, and she knows how to bring them home and wreck them. So when Danica hits us up on this show and says, I'm telling you, Rome, if Tebow is not cut after that game, I will lick Rit's head. I believe it. And sure enough, first thing this morning, Tim Tebow tweets in part, and I quote, thankful for the highs and even the lows, the opportunities and the setbacks. I've never wanted to make decisions out of fear of failure, and I'm grateful for the chance to have pursued a dream. End quote. And you know, if somebody is jumping on Twitter first thing to thumb out a yearbook-style message, then you know something just went down. And what went down was that Jacksonville did in fact release him. The dream is dead. The terrible experiment that never had a chance goes up in flames. Now, I know what you're expecting. You're expecting me to come in here and clown Tim Tebow and say that he looks like a complete and total idiot right now for thinking that he could play tight end in the NFL after being out of that league for 9 years, after being an average to below average player even when he was in the league almost a decade ago. I mean, there is a reason why his NFL career ended in his mid-20s. And that reason is he just wasn't that good. Best guy ever? Maybe. Maybe. Most average, overhyped NFLer ever? Pretty much.
Not good.
But I'm not here to kill this guy or to talk about how disgraceful and embarrassing those highlights were of him attempting to block the opposition this past weekend. You've already seen all that. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that, nor am I here to tell you how bad he looks. And he does look bad. But here is the truth. Here is the bottom line. Tebow himself does not come out of this looking like the biggest idiot. Urban Meyer does. I'm not putting this on Tebow. Sure, he looked like he had never even played the sport of football before in that exhibition game. Missing blocks, falling over, spearing his own guy. But the truth of the matter is, this really is no different than this guy going off to that adult fantasy baseball camp with the Mets for the last several years. And in his defense, I have to say, why not? I mean, why the hell not? If somebody gives you a chance to make a team, why not? Why not give it a shot? I mean, other than your reputation and pride and legacy. And it's a terrible look, but other than all that, what do you really have to lose? Of course he was absolutely undeserving of this shot and had absolutely no business being out there and absolutely no business taking up a roster spot from somebody who might actually help that team. Maybe another weapon to help a young quarterback. But in Tebow's defense, he did not put a gun to Urban Meyer's head to force him to do this. Now, zero credit to Tebow for facing the, quote, fear of failure, or whatever he called it. It was not a fear of failure. It was a guarantee of failure. But he went for it anyway. And so would just about everybody else on the planet. Like, you're telling me that if an NFL team called you today and said, hey, can you come to training camp? No, come to training camp. This is an official invite. We'll hook you up with some sick gear. You could try to make the team. Are you going to tell me, any of you, that if a team called you and said, come to camp, we want you here, that you would say no? Hell no. Hell no. Hell no, you wouldn't. If somebody came to me and offered me that opportunity, an opportunity that I was in no way deserving of, like Tebow did not deserve that opportunity, man, I would do the same thing Tebow did. I'd accept it. They write huge checks. People write huge checks just to throw on their favorite team's gear and run around pretending to be an actual player in these adult fantasy camps. Tebow got to throw on Jags gear and run around pretending to be an actual player, and he didn't have to pay a dime. In fact, they paid him. So I see this guy working. Yes, it was a terrible idea. No, it never had a chance to succeed. Yes, it was a terrible idea that only two people on the planet thought could actually work. And as terrible as Tebow looked in that exhibition game, I'm telling you, Urban Meyer looks so much worse. So much worse. Because he was the genius who thought that bringing in a 34-year-old man who had not played in the league in nearly a decade and asked him to learn a new position on the fly. That genius thought that would work. He was the genius who thought that he could teach Tim Tebow a new position. Never mind that a bunch of other coaches, including Bill Belichick himself, tried to make it work with Tebow in the NFL and couldn't do it. Oh no. But Herb, with no NFL head coaching experience, was going to be the one to do it. He was going to do the thing that the greatest ever couldn't do. Yet, sure you weren't Herb. So you tell me, is that the most arrogant thing ever or the most idiotic thing ever? I can answer that. Yes. And by the way, do you have any idea how disrespectful that is to tight ends? Do you really think that dudes like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Gronk just roll out of bed and do what they do? Hell no. They work their asses off, and they have for decades to do everything that they do on the football field. Austin Hooper, as an example, my guy. You think these guys just roll out of the rack and can just do this? Hell no. Oh, and don't tell me that Tebow was just going to be a blocking tight end, so that's easier. That is insanely disrespectful to actual blocking tight ends. Like, these guys have to block some of the freakiest, twitchiest, athletic pass rushers on the planet. But you're just going to teach a failed quarterback and a failed outfielder how to do that in a matter of weeks. Man, get out of here with that bullcrap. And if this was just about trying to find a blocking tight end, then let me ask you this. You couldn't just find a blocking tight end? You couldn't find one who was, I don't know, a decade younger, who had actually played football in the last few years, who had maybe even played the position before? Your scouting department botched that so badly that you had to grab a 34-year-old former minor league outfielder. We're talking about an old man who has not played an NFL game in years, and you think you can just bring this guy back and that he'd make an NFL team because you had some cool moments with him nearly a decade and a half ago. Man, I'm telling you, this guy who's never coached an NFL game was going to bring in a guy who's never played an NFL game at a certain position, and that was going to work. The hell it was. We all knew that wasn't going to work. Those two are the only ones who thought that would work. And can I tell you something else? Even if it did work, and it was never going to, but even if it did work, I'll play along. Exactly what would you get for that? A backup to the backup blocking tight end who was one of the oldest guys on the team. In other words, exactly zero reward for that. So let me repeat all of this because I still cannot get over the arrogance of this. Urban Meyer, as one of his first moves in charge of an NFL team, decides he wants to bring in somebody to play a position he has never played before, who had been out of the league for nearly a decade. Do you know how dumb that sounds? But to Herb, it sounded like a good idea. And yes, it's a hell of a lot of time for me to spend on a team cutting their 7th tight end, or whatever the hell Tebow was. But it's not about that. I'm spending the time because I want to make the point. What this is about is Meyer and his way of doing things. One of the worst ideas ever with the most predictable outcome ever. But Meyer just kept up that charade for weeks and only cut him when he had absolutely no choice but to cut him. There was no way those highlights could hit social media and you could keep that guy around. Absolutely no part of this made sense. Everybody knew it, but Herb plowed ahead anyway. That's why this matters. It's not about Tebow. It's about Herb and the thought process that went into this. It's about how this guy, who is supposed to save the franchise, thinks and operates. Either nobody in the organization told him it was asinine, or they did, and he wouldn't listen. This whole unnecessary venture, this whole colossal waste of time reveals way more about Herb than it does Tebow. And what it shows is really bad. So I would tell you to coach him up, Herb, but I'm not sure that's possible. Who knows how much of that locker room you already lost with that debacle? Because the surest way to not get the buy-in from your veteran players is to pull some college bullcrap like that. And that's exactly what that was, and it blew up in his face. Hope that was worth it.